Hey fellas, hope you guys doing great. In today's video we will see, what if Naruto merges his soul with Aang and Got Harem in Avtar, Part 1. Huge shout out to PSaid. If you end up liking this video please consider subscribe, and like the video. So let's start the story. And that is how you learn to mold chakra. Aang ended his explanation. Now you can use the trip to do those exercises. If you have questions just ask and I will do what I can to help you. Speaking of trip, do you know where we are going at all? Sokka asked. While Sokka was asking this, Katara had taken out Sokka's damaged pants and started sewing them, deciding that the exercises could wait a bit longer. I admit that I am more used to navigating via landmarks, but I don't know that many landmarks that are guaranteed to still exits, and even if I didn't we are surrounded by water, Aang stated, indicating below them. However, by my estimate we should be there soon. But what are you basing those estimates on? Sokka asked. A ninja doesn't reveal his tricks, Aang evaded. That's just an excuse to not tell us that you really do not have any idea when we will get there, isn't it? Sokka asked. For now just focus on learning to mold chakra, Aang stated. Still don't get why you want me to learn it. I already told you that I am not interested in learning your magic, Sokka stated. Well, if you learn it you will be able to do things like this, Aang stated, then stood and started walking around Appa's neck, using chakra to keep him from falling. Hey Katara, you should see this top, he says as he is hanging upside down from Appa. That's great, Aang. Katara states, not looking away from her sewing. Aang walks back up. You didn't even look. Katara looks up. That's great. Aang, she says again. But I'm not doing it now. Aang says, annoyed. You really should pay attention when I show these things. They might give you ideas for how you could use chakra to supplement your own skills. Sokka waves an arm breezily at Aang like he's trying to shoo him. Stop bugging her, airhead. He stated, you need to give girls space when they do their sewing. Katara casts her brother an annoyed glare. What does me being a girl have to do with sewing? She asks in an irritated voice. Sokka, while resting with his arms behind his head, replies simple. Girls are better at fixing pants than guys, and guys are better at hunting and fighting and stuff like that. At this, Katara gets an annoyed look, but Sokka continues, it's just a natural order of things. Katara suddenly smiles. All done with your pants? She states, showing the pants that still have a hole in them, and look what a great job I did. She continues sarcastically and tosses the pants in Sokka's direction, hitting him in the face. Wait. I was just kidding. Sokka says as he sticks one arm through the large hole in his pants. I can't wear these. Katara, please. Relax, Sokka. Aang says enthusiastically, where we're going, you won't need any pants. Aang then yanks Appa's reins to the left, his tongue sticking out of the corner of his mouth. Appa picks up speed as he flies to the left. Soon Aang and his friends arrive at an island. After Appa has landed they quickly dismount. We just made a pit stop yesterday. Sokka says, shouldn't we get a little more flying done before we camp out? He's right. Katara says, while Aang is looking across the water with a hand shadowing his eyes. At this rate, we won't get to the North Pole until spring. But Appa's tired, aren't you, boy? Aang said innocently. Appa doesn't react at all apart from a mild grunt, which comes across less than convincing. And anyway, there is something I want to try here anyway, so it's two birds with one stone. Yeah, and I just bet that it's just a coincidence that Appa is tired someplace where you have something you want to do, Sokka says sarcastically. Aang then runs toward the shore, takes a sharp breath and points. Look! He says, pointing at the bay where an elephant koi jumps out the water and back in, creating a giant splash. The two siblings stare in awe at the giant fish. That's why we're here. Aang states and then starts to disrobe, causing Katara to blush and look away, though she quickly gets herself under control and turns back around. Aang runs to the coastline and then across the water, though he quickly finds that his footing is unstable and realizes that he need to retrain his waterwalking. Katara and Sokka are still standing on shore, looking after him. Am I seeing things or is he running on the water? Sokka asks, is that airbending, waterbending or chakra? He adds before Katara can even reply to his first question. He is walking on the water, though whether it is using airbending or chakra I can't tell, Katara replies. Since he hasn't trained in waterbending I am quite sure that he isn't using that. Meanwhile Aang is getting closer to where the koi fish are. He dives into the water and immediately appears again, now holding on to the back fin of one of these giant animals as it jumps out of the water before diving again. On the shore, Katara smiles broadly and is impressed at the sight of Aang riding the koi fish, while Sokka stares at the scene with an uninterested look upon his face and his arms crossed. Behind them, Momo is jumping excitedly up and down as Aang's koi fish reappears again. Ha 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 ha! Aang laughs from atop the fish while waving at Katara. Katara returns the wave. Two other koi jump out of the water behind Aang, one slightly to the left and one slightly to the right. Aang is still laughing loudly with excitement as they race through the water. On the beach, Momo is still excitedly jumping up and down while Katara addresses her brother, who still has his arms crossed. "He looks pretty good out there," Katara says with a smile. "Are you kidding?" Sokka says in an unimpressed tone while he lazily gestures at Aang in the water. "The fish is doing all the work." Katara then notices that Appa is about to eat some of their equipment, mistaking it for food, and quickly runs to him. "No, Appa. Don't eat that," with her only reply being a grunt. Aang stands atop of the fish without using his hands to hold on, instead using chakra through his feet, in an attempt to impress Katara. He sees Katara runs off inland, however her movement indicate that it is in panic or urgency, which means she isn't leaving to avoid looking at him. He jumps of the fish and starts, still unsteadily, to water walk back towards the beach. Being focused on the beach and trying to figure out what caused Katara to leave, he doesn't notice the dark shadow of a large body appearing beneath the water's surface behind him, heading towards the koi fish. Sokka, however, sees it. "There's something in the water behind you," he yells in alarm, but Aang is still spacing out, so doesn't even realize he is being spoken to. Soon Katara reappears next to her brother again, while Momo is screeching in alarm as the shadow decides to go after Aang after the fish fled. "What's wrong?" Katara asks her brother, having not seen the shadow yet. "Aang's in trouble," Sokka tells her, indicating towards the shadow closing in on Aang. He then calls out to get his attention. "Get out of there," Katara calls out as she sees the shadow. Aang looks up to see Katara and Sokka motioning for him to exit the water by flailing their arms and calling to him from far away. "Get back here!" Sokka yells. Aang turns around to look behind him and sees a massive dorsal fin of an unknown creature emerge from the water directly behind him. Foregoing chakra, he quickly uses airbending to propel himself towards the beach, trying to put some distance between him and the creature. As Aang is fleeing towards the beach, leaving a trail of white foam in his wake, he feels the creature following behind him, slowly gaining on him. He speeds up slightly, not really seeing where he is going, except for the fact that he is going towards the beach. When he reaches the beach, he finds himself running directly towards Katara and quickly uses airbending to avoid her, not wanting to risk hurting her, instead colliding with Sokka. While the dorsal fin of the creature disappears beneath the surface, Katara runs to where her brother and Aang have come to a halt. Sokka is leaning against a tree trunk, a trail marking where his body slid across the ground. Aang is dressing himself as Katara and Momo approach the two. "What was that thing?" Katara asked the two. "I don't know," Aang replied. "Well, let's not stick around to find out," Sokka says as he gets up and dusts of his hands, time to hit the road. Just then, several female warriors clad in green kimonos descend from the treetops, ambushing the trio. The women quickly encircle the group. Sokka gets pulled back and knocked over. Katara is pulled by her arm, and as she leans in to maintain her balance, someone pulls her parka over her head and pulls her down. Aang is momentarily distracted by Katara's struggles, but leans back out of instinct when he feels someone reach for his collar. He leans back far enough to put his hands on the ground and uses them to lift his feet off the ground and do an airbending kick at the person who tried to grab him. The person avoids the kick but not the air that comes with it, and is catapulted backwards into a 3. "Who are you people?" Aang asks as he looks around, then dodges a fan from behind, then spins around and hits the person in the stomach, sending her backwards as well. He looks around and sees two others ready to attack him from 2 different angles, and quickly kicks up sand to obscure himself from view, then jumps up when he fells the 2 approaching, making them collide with each other. "Seems we underestimated you," says the last of the fighters, who was currently guarding Katara, Sokka and Momo, who was in a bag. Unlike the rest of the girl that had simple headbands with a golden squire in the middle of their forehead, the headdress that this one was wearing was a lot more intricate, which Aang took to mean that she was the leader. Has happened to me before, Aang says with a smile, then jumps up when the two warriors he left in the sand cloud jump out at him. He was, however, not prepared for the leader to jump forward and use the shoulder of one of the other two as a springboard to crash into him and knock him to the ground. I could say the same thing, the girl says as her fellow warriors join her and help her tie up and blindfold Aang. Soon Aang and his friends were led to a village, though being blindfolded they weren't aware of this, and tied to a pole. You three have some explaining to do, a male voice states sternly. And if you don't answer all our questions, we're throwing you back in the water with the Unagi. A female voice added that Aang recognized as the leader of the group that attacked them. Show yourselves, cowards! Sokka responses in challenge. Following his exclamation, the blindfolds are removed and Aang sees the 5 warriors he fought along with an old man. One of the warriors, from what he can tell the first one he defeated, is sending him a dirty look while the others seem to be more appraising. The leader is focused more on Sokka than him. Who are you? Sokka asks from beside Aang. Where are the men who ambushed us? Aang felt like face-palming, but being tied up was unable to do so. There were no men. The leader states indignantly with a clenched fist. We ambushed you. Now tell us, who are you and what are you doing here? Wait a second, Sokka states with a glance to his right to where Aang stands looking for confirmation. There's no way that Sokka is stopped halfway through his sentence by a kick from Aang. Yes, they did defeat us. Aang states they were quite effective actually. They had good stealth, managing to sneak up on us, even if we were a bit distracted. And more importantly for me was they showed a great deal of honor by not threatening to hurt either of you to get me to stop fighting back, instead using teamwork to take me by surprise and capture me. The warriors looked slightly impressed and grateful, though still wary of him. Sokka looked at him in disbelief. You mean to tell me that we got defeated by a bunch of girls, he stated. A bunch of girls, huh? The leader states angrily and grabs his collar. The Unagi is gonna eat well tonight. No, don't hurt him. He didn't mean it. Katara says pleadingly. My brother is just an idiot sometimes. The leader released Sokka, but still stares at him in dismay. It's my fault. Aang suddenly states with a sad look on his face, causing the other 3 to look surprised at him. In surprise, I'm sorry we came here. I wanted to ride the elephant koi. How do we know you're not the elder man began and pointed at them Fire Nation spies. Kyoshi stayed out of the war so far. And we intend to keep it that way. This island is named for Kyoshi? Aang states, an exited expression on his face. I know Kyoshi. Ha! How could you possibly know her? The man stated while looking at something at the top of the pole they were tied to. Avtar. Kyoshi was born here 400 years ago. She's been dead for centuries. Aang looked up and could just make out a statue of Kyoshi, though the angle made it hard to tell. I know her because I'm the Avatar. Aang states, shocking the people there. That's impossible. The leader of the warriors says the last Avatar was an airbender who disappeared 100 years ago. Aang smiles sheepishly. That's me. He says, surely you noticed me using airbending when we fought, right? Did he use airbending? The male asked the leader of the warriors. I can't tell for sure. He did jump quite high, but I didn't see any wind involved, the warrior replied. I meant when I repelled the first attack. Aang cut in. Surely you noticed that my feet didn't touch her, giving her quick reflexes in dodging me, yet still she was sent flying. That might as well have been some advanced earthbending move, the warrior replied, still skeptical. Throw the imposter to the Unagi. The elder stated, sure that the chances of this child being the Avatar was so small that the warrior's assessment was probably correct. All the warriors immediately retract their metal fans from their belts and slid them open. Ready to counter any sudden attack, they threateningly start to move forward and surround the bound friends. Katara leans forward in the ropes, glancing to her right where Aang is bound to the pole. Aang, do some airbending, she says nervously. Sokka is looking at the female warriors, his mouth open in shock. Aang looks questioningly at Katara for a moment. Aang bends over before pushing himself off the ground. He leaves a large dust cloud as he shoots in the air, stretching out his ropes, using one of the outstretched fans of the statue to snap them. now completely free of his bonds, him tumbles elegantly over the statue. Wow! Did you see that? An airbender was said among the spectators from the village as Aang lands gently on the ground in front of them, his robes still fluttering in the air. The man and the Kyoshi warriors stare at him in shock. A lot more people gather around to see what is going on. It's true. You are the Avatar, the man says in awe. Aang looks behind him and sees that the other are still tied up. Could you free my friends now? He asks the warriors, who quickly go to free them, while the crowd seems to be overwhelmed by the sheer fact that the Avatar is there. One man in the front starts to emit a high-pitched squeal while widely tossing his hands up in the air in admiration. He gets so overexcited that he starts to foam and faints. The rest of the villagers just keep on cheering. Soon after that they are taken to the elder's house, who introduces himself as Unagi, and were given an evening meal as well as rooms where they could get some rest. The next morning Aang, Katara and Momo are sitting at a long table, while a villager places another dish on the already richly filled table. Aang and Momo are very excited to see the display of delectables in front of it, but Katara supports an uneasy look. Dessert for breakfast, Aang says, a bit skeptical. Oh well, I can work it of later when I train. Katara, meanwhile, pokes one of the squishy-looking, orange puffs with the flat top in front of her. She then picks up and closely investigates the dessert. Aang, on the other hand, doesn't share her reluctance, and starts eating at a fast pace. They sure do threat the Avatar nicely here, he says excitedly. Katara still isn't convinced about the deliciousness of the dessert she's holding and glances at Aang. Aang says, then offers Katara a dessert of the same kind he's eating. Katara, you've got to try these. Katara puts down the orange dessert and accepts the dessert Aang offers her and takes a bite. Well, maybe just a bite, she says, while Momo sneaks up to Aang and snatches a dessert out of his other hand and quickly dashes away while Aang just smiles at its antics. Aang grabs another dessert in front of him while Katara munches down the piece of cake and reaches across the table for the same dessert Aang just took. Aang looks past Katara at Sokka, who is sulking in the corner just as Momo appears between Aang and Katara and quickly snatches another cupcake from the table before vanishing underneath it. Sokka, what's your problem? Aang says, eat. Not hungry, Sokka replies, surprising Aang. But you're always hungry, Aang states. He's just upset because a bunch of girls kicked his butt yesterday, Katara states mockingly. They snuck up on me, Sokka protests. Right, Katara relied, still in a mocking tone, and then they kicked your butt. Sokka angrily stands up. Sneak attacks don't count, he states indignantly, and then starts walking out of the room with big strides while mumbling to himself. Tie me up with ropes. I'll show them a thing or two. He then stops and goes back to the table and starts collecting a bunch of desserts. I'm not scared of any girls. Who do they think they are anyway? He then shoves one of the desserts into his mouth and stalks off again. This is tasty. What's he so angry about? Aang said excitedly, if slightly confused, not understanding Sokka's point of view since to him gender wasn't important when it came to fighting. It's great here. They're giving us the royal treatment, he continues. Hey, don't get too comfortable. Katara says it's risky for us to stay in one place for very long. Momo's arm comes into view from underneath the table. He scans the table for new pastries to snatch. Aang offers a pasty to Momo's grasping paw. I'm sure we'll be fine for a while, just so we can train a bit before moving on, he says as the lemur feels the dessert and quickly snatches it out of Aang's hand. Besides, did you see how happy I'm making this town? Aang moves closer to Katara and then turns around to look out of the window at the statue. They're even cleaning up that statue in my honor. Well, it's nice to see you excited about being the Avatar, Katara says, though she looks slightly concerned. I just hope it doesn't all go to your head. Come on, you know me better than that, Aang says reassuringly. I'm both a monk and a ninja, I can handle it. Aang gets up anyway. I'm going to go find those warriors, since they were quite good fighters, especially considering that they didn't even use any bending at all. I hope they are willing to spar with me. Then he left, not catching the look of jealousy on Katara's face, since she realized that one of these warriors could end up catching Aang's eye, and unlike with her, he wouldn't be held back because of them having different bending abilities. Aang approached the dojo where he had been told the Kyoshi warriors often train. Walking up and seeing that they were indeed inside, he knocked on the wall beside the opening to get their attention. "May I come in?" he asked them politely. "Of course, Avtar," Aang the leader says formally. "Just Aang is fine, no need to be formal," Aang said with a smile. "Then you may call me Suki," Suki replied, returning his smile. "So why did you come here? Did you just want to watch, or did you want to join in?" "While watching might be interesting, I already know that your fighting style won't fit me," Aang said. "Like most, you rely on a set fighting style, learned through katas. I prefer a more impulsive approach, adapting my fighting style to the situation and opponents, which is harder to do if you have focused on training one style." "Then why did you come here?" Suki asked, since he still hadn't answered that. "Oh, right," Aang said, remembering why he was there. "I wanted to know whether you would be willing to spar with me. No bending at all, just pure fighting." "But you're the Avatar, your greatest strength lies in your bending abilities," one of the other warriors said. "True, but that is no excuse to be useless at fighting without bending," Aang said. "And I do have a trick or two up my sleeve that isn't elemental bending, so don't take me as defenseless," he added. "Well, I at least have nothing against fighting against you," another warrior said. "Still need to get you back for air kicking me on the beach." "You can try, though I think we should go somewhere else, since this place is rather cramped for fighting and I would hate to damage it," Aang stated. "I know just the place," Suki said, leading them outside. "Well, this place looks perfect," Aang said, looking around the clearing Suki had led them to. It reminded him of the training ground back home, without the poles and remembrance stone. There were 3s on 3 sides, while the 4th had a mountain wall. There were some rocks laying around in the clearing, but to him that was a good thing. "Glad you approve," Suki said, then turned to the girls. "Who wants to go first?" she asked them. "I was actually thinking of fighting you all at once," Aang stated. "Rather confident, aren't you?" Suki asked. "You couldn't beat 5 of us when you were allowed to airbend. What makes you think you have a chance against 6 of us when you can't use airbending?" "Good point, I guess," Aang said. "In that case, I would like to fight the strongest of you, since I like a challenge." "That would be me," Suki said with a smile, while some of the other warriors looked sad that they wouldn't get to fight him and get revenge for their loss at the beach. The two got into fighting positions, but before they could start, Suki said, "What do you say to making this a little more interesting?" "How so?" Aang asked, interested. "By making a small wager on the outcome," Suki said. "If I win, you teach us some of your skills, or learn some of ours if we find your skills to be lacking, while wearing our traditional warrior outfit." "And if I win?" Aang asked, thinking that even if she won he could henge into a female Aang to avoid having to wear a dress while in a boy's body. "I'm open for suggestions," Suki said. Aang said as he thought of what he could ask for, before a smile appeared on his face. "If I win, then you go on a picnic with me after the fight without your makeup or warrior dress and tell me some more about the culture and people of this island, since I am interested in it." "Sounds fair to me," Suki said. "I look forward to seeing you in our warrior gear," she added with a smirk. "Don't count me out just yet," Aang said with a smile. "Now let's start this fight, shall we?" One of the other warriors stepped forward. "Ready?" she asked, getting a nod from both fighters. "Begin," she said, and jumped back. Suki immediately jumped forward and slashed downwards at Aang with her fan, but Aang sidestepped the attack and tried to kick her side. She made a one-handed handstand to avoid him and spun on her hands slightly before returning a foot to the ground and continued the circular momentum to slash at Aang's stomach. Aang jumped backwards to avoid the fan but received a small cut in his robe. He landed and then jumped forward again, taking advantage of her unstable footing after her spinning slash to kick her behind her knees to knock her down. But immediately after her fall she rolled away and then to her feet before he could take advantage of her position. The two stood looking at each other before they smiled. Then they jumped forward again and traded blows. An hour later the two of them were still fighting, though at a much slower pace. Aang had several cuts, both on his clothing and his skin, while Suki had a nasty bruise on her cheek and a slight limp indicating that her leg had been hit. On the other hand, she wasn't breathing as heavily as Aang was. "Man, this body is a lot weaker than my old one," Aang thought sadly. "I've become too reliant on airbending to support my movement, so my body hasn't been strengthened the same way." He and Suki once more charged forward, Suki ducked under a punch and tried to tackle him to the ground, but Aang just followed the momentum of the fall and used it to throw her behind him rather than allowing her to pin him to the ground. They both got up, and this time Aang jumped onto a rock nearby. Suki knew what would happen if she tried to attack him while he was on the rock. The bruise on her face was a reminder of the last time she did it, so instead she backed away slightly so that he couldn't do a surprise attack on her, while she considered how to get him down without getting a fist to her face. "Seems we are at a stalemate," Aang said from atop the stone. "We've fought for over an hour, yet none of us has managed to win. I have done slightly more damage to you than you have to me, however you are less tired than I am. Our positions right now doesn't allow either of us to attack without the other taking advantage of it, so we are truly stuck until one of us decides to take the risk. So what do you propose we do? I have no intention of giving up, and I'm quite sure that you don't intend to give up either," Suki said. "Let's call it a draw, both of us win, which of course means that I will train you and you will tell me about your culture," Aang said. "I can agree to that, since we are evenly matched in a non-bender duel," Suki said, "though I realize you could easily defeat me if you had bending at your disposal," she added. The other Kyoshi warriors, who had been watching from the trees on the edge of the clearing, joined them. "That was an impressive fight," one of them said. "Yeah," another one agreed. "I hope that Aang can teach us some of it." Suddenly Katara came out of the woods from the opposite side of the Kyoshi warriors. "I agree that it was a really impressive fight," she stated as she walked up to them, "though I could do without all the damage to your clothing. It's going to take forever to fix those," she added. "Anyway, one of the villagers is looking for you, Aang. Something about wanting to paint you or something like that." "Okay, thanks for telling me," Aang said, then turned to the Kyoshi warriors. "Hey, maybe you should be in the picture with me. It would be fitting since the picture is for this island, and you are an important part of it." He then turned to Suki. "We can go get that lunch we agreed on after the painter is finished," he told her. Katara turns around and starts to leave in order to keep Aang from seeing her jealousy. Aang sat in the lotus potions, though he wasn't meditating. He was merely posing for the painting, so he was looking at the painter and smiling. Behind him stood Suki while 4 other Kyoshi warriors were kneeling beside him, 2 on each side. It had taken a while to agree on the pose. The painter wanted all of the warriors kneeling while he stood behind them, but Aang felt it was better to have him sitting like he was now with the proud warriors of Kyoshi standing behind him. In the end they compromised on the current setup. "There, I'm done with the rough sketch," the painter said. "I'll paint it up probably and show it to you for your approval tomorrow. Thank you for your time." "No problem," Aang said happily as he used airbending to get back to his feet. He then turned to Suki. "I'll meet you at the dojo in half an hour so you can get ready." "Could you make it an hour? I want to get through some katas before I get ready," Suki asked. "As Kyoshi warriors, we have to go through certain katas at least once daily unless we are fighting in a war or taken prisoners." "That's fine, I'll find something to do in the meantime," Aang just said. "I can't believe I got beat up by a bunch of girls," Sokka grumbles to himself as he walks towards the dojo. Inside the dojo, the 6 Kyoshi warriors are going through their katas. They are performing the routine in perfect unison. Sokka peeks his head around the door to look at them. He smiles smugly and enters. "Sorry, ladies," he says in a condescending tone, interrupting their exercise. Suki and the other warriors stop and close their fans. They stare at Sokka with a serious look on their faces. "Didn't mean to interrupt your dance lesson," Sokka says while he stretches out. "I was just looking for somewhere to get a little workout." "Well, you're in the right place," Suki says as Sokka continues his warm-up. "Sorry about yesterday. I didn't know that you were friends with the Avtar," she adds. "It's all right," Sokka says while stretching his arms, then mockingly suppressing a laugh while speaking. "I mean, normally I'd hold a grudge, but seeing as you guys are a bunch of girls, I'll make an exception." "I should hope so. A big strong man like you?" Suki says sarcastically, though slightly wary that Sokka, like Aang, could be stronger than he seemed. "We wouldn't stand a chance." "True," Sokka says smugly, "but don't feel bad. After all, I'm the best warrior in my village." "Wow! Best warrior, huh?" she says still in a sarcastic tone and glances back at her fellow warriors. "In your whole village?" She looks back at Sokka. "Maybe you'd be kind enough to give us a little demonstration." "Oh. Well. I mean. Sokka says as his eyes widen. Come on, girls. Suki said to her fellow warriors, wouldn't you like him to show us some moves? They must be just as impressive as those the airbender showed us. The other warriors giggled and smiled, indicating that they wanted to see his moves. Well, if that's what you want, I'd be happy to, he says and places his hands on Suki's shoulder in order to push her back a little, but she doesn't move a bit. All right, you stand over there. Now, this may be a little tough, but try to block me. While he's talking, Sokka takes on a fighting stance while Suki hasn't moved a muscle from the position Sokka has put her in. Sokka bends his knees and then attacks the female warrior by trying to punch her. Suki doesn't leave her position, but easily defends herself by bringing up her left arm and thrusting her closed fan against Sokka's shoulder. He cries out in pain and staggers backwards. Ah, he said while rubbing his and looking impressed, against his will, heh. Good. Of course, I was going easy on you. Of course, she replied sarcastically, and while Sokka might miss that, he could easily see her self-assured posture indicating that she didn't think him a worthy opponent. He quickly becomes annoyed and angry because of it. Let's see if you can, he starts out, his voice steadily raising while he attempts to hit Suki with a roundhouse kick. Handle this. Suki quickly dodges under Sokka's outstretched leg and pushes him off balance. When the Water Tribe warrior lands flat on his back with a loud thud, Suki lazily opens her fans to wave herself some air. Sokka, a little shocked by his second failure, loses his temper at the sight of Suki's defiant posture. That does it! He screams as he gets up and madly charges her again. Suki quickly closes her fan and moves out of Sokka's way. She grabs him by the arm with her right hand, while she pushes against his shoulder with her left hand, quickly spinning him around. After 2 turns, she switches position and spins Sokka in the other direction. Sokka is being tossed around with no means to stop it, a look of distress in his face. Suki suddenly stops spinning, which causes Sokka to topple forward. Suki then loosens Sokka's belt and ties his left hand to his right foot behind his back in one swift movement. Sokka tries to maintain his balance for a while by jumping on one leg, but it isn't long before he loses footage and smacks down flat on his face. Anything else you want to teach us? Suki states mockingly. Sokka blushes in humiliation as the Kyoshi warriors laugh at him. Meanwhile, Aang has gotten a following of fangirls while he was looking for Katara. He has talked to them a bit but found them too focused on him being the Avatar, an airbender, rather than him as a person, so he had quickly lost interest. So when he found Katara, he quickly made his way to her. Hey Katara, he tells out to her as he walks toward her. She seemed to be gathering supplies for when they continued their travel, if the pot with groceries was anything to go by. Hello Aang, Katara responded in a slightly cold voice. Shouldn't you be on a date with Suki about now, she adds. I wouldn't call it a date, Aang stated, but anyway, Suki wanted to do something first, so I have some time to kill, so I thought I'd meet up with you. Oh good. Can you help me carry this back to the room? It's a little heavy. Sure, lead the way, Aang said, lifting up the pot easily. Are these supplies? He then asks. Yes, they are, Katara said. They give us discounts for being with the Avatar, so I thought this would be a good place to restock. That's great, Aang said happily, especially since our resources are limited right now. That was what I was thinking too, Katara said with a smile. So, if it isn't a date you're having with Suki, then what is it? Oh, that, I wanted to know some more about the culture on this island since it's named after one of my past lives. Aang said, so I thought that getting the leader of the Kyoshi warriors to tell me about it would be the best way to learn about it, since she hopefully won't just drone on and on about boring stuff like older people tend to do. Guess that makes sense, though I still think it would be better to learn about it from Unagi since he likely knows more about it, Katara countered. I prefer quality over quantity, and I'm likely to fall asleep if he goes into too many detail, Aang said. Anyway, I do want to get to know Suki anyway, so this way I get to do both at the same time. Katara's eyes turned cold at those words, but she did her best to hide it. Aang had already told her his feelings along with his position on a relationship between them. Either she needed to come to terms with there being others, or she would need to move on, but it wasn't easy for her to do that. Well, I hope you have a good time, Katara said with false cheerfulness. What are your plans afterwards? Afterwards I will teach the Kyoshi warriors the basics of chakra, like I did with you and Sokka, though it will only be to the point of using it to augment their abilities and possibly 3 walk. Aang said if you want to hear the lecture again or just be there to train on your own, then you're welcome to join us. I might do that, though I need to finish restocking first, Katara said as they arrived back in their room where Aang sat down the pot and Katara started packing the things away. After that I think we should continue our journey, since staying here much longer might put these people in danger. You're probably right, though I really like it here, Aang said. The two then fell into a comfortable silence as Katara continued packing things away. Where's Suki? Sokka asks as he re-enters the dojo. One of the warriors stepped forward. She's getting ready to go eat with the Avtar to tell him about some of our traditions, she said. Why do you ask? Well, you see, Sokka started just as Suki came into the room, without her warrior gear. Spit it out, she said. Sokka looked momentarily confused, before he recognized who it was. What do you want? Suki continued. Sokka went down to his knees, bowing his head slightly. I would be honored if you would teach me. Even if I'm a girl? Suki asked him. I'm sorry if I insulted you earlier. Sokka apologized. I was wrong. We normally don't teach outsiders, let alone boys. Suki told him. Please make an exception. Sokka said. I won't let you down. Right now I have someone else to meet, but I think that one of the others can train you. Suki said. But you have to follow all of our traditions. Of course, Sokka said happily. And I mean all of them, Suki said with a slightly sadistic grin. Do I really have to wear this? Sokka whined. It feels a little girly. It's a warrior's uniform. Suki said. You should be proud. The silk thread symbolizes the brave blood that flows through our veins. The gold insignia represents the honor of the warrior's heart. Bravery and honor, Sokka said proudly just as Aang entered. Hey Sokka. Nice dress, he said with a smile. I'll probably be wearing one later when I teach the Kyoshi some of my basic tricks. He then turned to Suki. You ready? He asked. Yeah, let's go, Suki replied, leaving Sokka to be taught by one of the others. So the reason that Kyoshi warriors must be non-bending females is because she once taught a male earth-bending force that ended up being more damaging than helpful? Aang asked for clarification. He and Suki were currently sitting on a hill just able to see the bay where Aang had ridden the koi fish. That is what history tells us anyway, Suki said, though who this force was and what happened to them is unknown. It wasn't Kyoshi herself but her daughter who made the rule though, since the consequences didn't become clear until after Kyoshi's death. Must have been hard on Kyoshi to find out what had become of the force of earthbenders she trained, Aang said sadly. Probably, Suki agreed. So this whole eating lunch together really was just to get to know our culture, she suddenly asked. Well, I also wanted to get to know you, Aang admitted sheepishly. Oh, and what have you learned? Suki asked with a shy smile. That you are a good person with a strong conviction. Also, your main reason for training is to protect the people on this island, something I truly respect. Aang started. Apart from that, you are also a beautiful girl. Thank you, Suki said with a smile. Many on this island see only Suki the warrior, so I am glad that you saw beyond that. You're welcome, Aang said. Then he suddenly jumped up using airbending firebenders, he said, pointing towards the bay where a familiar ship had just arrived. You go warn the others and tell them to bring Appa. Since I'm pretty sure they're here for me, if I leave they should follow. Sorry I didn't get to train you, but that will need to wait till next time we meet. I'll hold you to that, Suki said, then quickly ran towards the village. Zuko was riding towards the village with his soldiers behind him, all mounted on Komodo rhinos, when suddenly a blast of wind came from his right. He reacted quickly and jumped down on the left side of the rhino, using it as shelter. However, he was unprepared for the air blast that came from the left, knocking him headfirst into the rhino. Hello again, Zuko said, a voice though he couldn't see where. I would say it is nice seeing you again, but I've never been good at lying. Then Zuko looked up to see Aang sitting on branch and leaning against a tree. My name is Prince Zuko, Avtar. Zuko said in anger, and you are coming with me back to the Fire Nation. Sorry, but I haven't mastered water or earth yet, so if I should follow the traditions then I am not ready to learn firebending yet. Aang said mockingly. You're coming as a prisoner. Zuko yelled as he got into a fighting position, not to learn any kind of bending. That's too bad. Aang replied, but I really don't have Aang quickly swung himself of the branch as Zuko sent a fire blast after him. Hey, hasn't anyone taught you that it's impolite to attack people in the middle of a... He jumped to the side to avoid another blast. Sentence. Zuko started firing blast of fire after Aang in an almost constant steam, while Aang just avoided the attacks, occasionally countering with an air blast. I will get you eventually, Avtar, Zuko yelled. Just then a growl was heard from above them, followed by Aang's staff landing in front of him. Guess my ride is here, Aang stated while picking up the staff. I'll see you later, Suze. He then unfolds the staff and takes off flying up to Appa. Once he lands, Appa quickly flies off. I think I can finally do chakra molding, Katara said happily. Just a moment, Aang said, then put his hands in the standard chakra molding hand sign Byakugan, he said quietly while focusing chakra to his eyes. He had trained using the Byakugan, though he was still not very proficient at it. He however believed that he should be able to see if someone was molding chakra. Show me, Katara, he said, while concentrating on keeping his sight on her rather than everything else around him. Okay, Katara said, putting her hands in the same sign as him and started to concentrate. Aang could immediately see the chakra moving through her system and getting molded by her hands, showing him that she had indeed succeeded. Now it was time to see if she could learn to use jutsu. Even when you're not trying to waterbend, I still get wet when you try to use special abilities, Sokka whined while trying to dry himself. I don't understand why her clones are made of mist. Aang said it isn't a water clone, since then it would be solid, and not just go through Sokka like it just did. Maybe it has something to do with my bending abilities, Katara proposed. I'm pretty sure it does, but I'm not sure what exactly, Aang replied. He sat quietly for a bit. Oh well, he then said, we'll probably figure it out later. For now, good work with the clone. I think we're close to Omashu. I used to always go there to visit my friend Bumi. Before we get there, you should probably disguise yourself, Katara said. It could be dangerous if people find out you're the Avatar. I don't want to use my henge, though. Aang said if one of Zuko's firebenders see you two traveling with someone looking completely different, then they might draw the conclusion that I can somehow change my looks, which will make them more cautious. I'd rather not show my abilities too soon. We'll figure something out before we get there then, Katara said. Ugh. This is so itchy, Aang said as they walked up the last big hill before Omashu. He had used Appa's fur to give himself hair that was similar to Kakashi and a mustache. He turned to Appa. How do you live in this stuff? All he got in response was a snort. Great, Sokka said beside him. Now you look just like my grandfather. Technically, Aang is 112 years old, Katara pointed out. Now let's get to skipping, young whippersnappers, Aang said in an old man's voice. The big city awaits just on the other side of this hill. A moment later they reached the hilltop and got their first view of Omashu. Wow, Katara said, in all we don't have buildings like this in the South Pole. They have buildings that don't melt, Sokka added. You do realize that Kyoshi had that too, right, Sokka? Aang asked. Right, I was being sarcastic, Sokka defended. Whatever you say, Sokka, Aang said with a grin. Anyway, let's go, slowpokes. The real fun's inside the city. Aang jumps down some of the hill and starts walking to Omashu. Aang, Katara, and Sokka walk down the path to Omashu, which had steep falls on either side. They stop a few feet away from the city. You guys are going to love Omashu, Aang said quickly, looking back at them before turning back to the gate. The people here are the friendliest in the world. Just then they heard a voice from in front of them. Rotten cabbages? The gate guard said to a cabbage merchant who is standing in front of the gate with a cabbage cart. What kind of slum do you think this is? He then earthbends the cabbage cart up, making it fly into the air and fall over the edge of the path. No! The cabbage merchant screamed. My cabbages! Katara, Sokka, and Aang look over the side to see the fallen cabbages. Just keep smiling, Aang says as he, Katara, and Sokka walk up to the gate. The guard brings up a boulder and hovers it over Aang's head. State your business, he yells at them. Aang quickly runs from underneath the boulder and up to the guard. My business is my business, young man, and none of yours, Aang says in his old man voice. Behind him the boulder falls to the ground while Katara shakes her head. I have a mind to bend you over my knee and paddle your backside. Settle down, old-timer. The guard said, just tell me who you are. Thinking of his current hairdo, Aang quickly decided his name's Bonzo Hataki. The third, he began, using Bonzo because it was a fairly common Earth nation name back in his time, and Hataki to honor Kakashi, and these are my grandkids. Katara walks up to the guard. Hi. June Hataki. She said to the guard, nice to meet you. You seem like a responsible young lady. The gate guard told her, see that your grandfather stays out of trouble. Enjoy Omashu. We will, Katara says, and she, Aang, and Sokka begin walking towards the gate. As Sokka starts going by, the guard turns to him. Wait a minute, the gate guard says, causing Sokka to stop as the guard places a hand on his shoulder. Aang and Katara turn around. You're a strong young boy. Show some respect for the elderly and carry your grandfather's bag. Good idea, Aang says in his old man voice and throws his bag so it goes over Sokka's shoulder and into his hands. The guard opens up the gate walls and Aang, Katara, and Sokka walk through. Momo's head then pops out of Aang's wig just as they get to the other side and the gate starts closing. The guard looks questionably at the sight, but the gates before he can get a closer look. Aang, Katara, and Sokka looked up at the city. Katara and Sokka focused on the buildings, but Aang was looking at something else. This is Omashu's delivery system, he stated in his normal voice, drawing the attention of the two others. Miles and miles of tubes and chutes. Earthbending brings the packages up, and gravity brings them down. Great, so they get their mail on time, Sokka stated, not really seeing why Aang found them so interesting. They do get their mail on time, but my friend Bumi found a better use for the chutes, Aang stated, thinking back to the time Bumi told him that it was actually the world's greatest super slide. One ride, Aang says as he, Katara, and Sokka sit in a mailbox on top of a particularly steep chute. Then we're off to the North Pole. Airbender's honor. It sounded like fun at first, but now I'm starting to have second, Katara began, just as Aang starts the box to go down the system thoughts. She ends her sentence in a yell. Aang, Katara, and Sokka start going down the chute. They see a set of spears on a track adjacent to the one they're on. At the bottom of the slope they're on connects with the one the spears are on, and, given that they are slightly in front of the spears, they suddenly find the spears behind them. Sokka ducks, and while Katara leans forward into Aang. I'm on it, Aang yells before he throws his weight back and forth, causing the box to jump out of the chute and onto a nearby roof. They quickly slide down the roof, landing between a bunch of soldiers and a captain telling them something about being prepared for anything. After that they continue through a stone fence right in front of another mailbox, causing pieces of the fence to knock it over. After that they manage to get back on the mailing system. Aang, do something, Katara yells, wanting him to stop the box. Use your airbending. Yeah. Great idea, Aang said, that'll make us go even faster. He continues, completely misunderstanding what Katara meant. Aang then airbends behind him and increases their speed. They soon reach a steep chute where they see an earthbender working with a box. They scream, fearing that they will crash into it, but moments before they arrive he sends of the box, causing them to sigh in relief only to scream again when he raises up another box right in front of them. They crash into it, causing both them and their box to fly into the air. Aang airbends the box back underneath them, making them fall back into the box. They then ride down roofs and through a house where someone was working on a vase, crashing said vase. Sorry, Aang yells out as they crash through the opposite wall. They then slide through another house, where they accidentally take a cat along for the ride. The cat and Momo have a fight on top of Aang's head until Momo manages to push the cat off. They crash through a small wall meant to prevent people from falling off the building and, after a fall, land on top of a cabbage cart, which, from what Aang could see, belonged to the same merchant that had trouble getting cabbages into Omashu. This was confirmed when he yelled, "My cabbages!" Since Aang was pretty sure that no two people could sound that much alike, unless they were twins. You're gonna pay for this. Guards then surround Aang, Sokka, and Katara. 2 cabbages, please, Aang says sheepishly. Soon thereafter Aang and his friends are taken before the king. When they first enter he has a thoughtful look on his face, which then changes slightly to one of recognition. Great, He recognized the tattoos as airbending tattoos Aang thought when he saw the expression. The guard that lead them in starts to speak. Your Majesty, these juveniles were arrested for vandalism, traveling under false pretenses, and malicious destruction of cabbages. Off with their heads! The cabbage merchant screams, who is standing slightly to the left of them. One for each head of cabbage! Silence! The guard says while waving a hand at the merchant. Only the king can pass down judgment. He looks at the king. What is your judgment, sire? The king looks thoughtful and looks at the three. Sokka looks somewhere else while making a sound somewhere between a hum and a whistle. Katara looks at the king with sparkly eyes. Aang tries to just look away, but when he notices the king focusing on him, he starts to whistle. Throw them! The king begins, then pauses while Sokka, Katara, and Aang gasp. A feast! This makes the guard look confused while the merchant looks unhappy. Sokka is smiling, while Katara and Aang have questioning looks. Soon Aang, Katara and Sokka are all seated in the dining room. Momo is sitting on the table eating a lot of food. The people in my city have gotten fat from too many feasts, so I hope you like your chicken with no skin, the king says standing behind them, picking a chicken leg up from Aang's plate. Thanks, but I don't eat meat, Aang states quickly. He actually could eat meat, but he kept that to himself unless with friends, since there was a chance that people would know that airbenders were vegetarians. How about you? The king says, turning to Sokka. I bet you like meat. He stuffs the chicken into Sokka's mouth. Sokka immediately starts eating it while the king begins walking around the table to his seat. Is it just me, or is this guy's crown a little crooked? Katara whispers to Aang. Aang just nods in reply. So tell me, young bald one, where are you from? The king asks as he sits down. I'm from Kangaroo Island, Aang answers, using the only name he could come up with that wasn't related to airbenders. Kangaroo Island, eh? The king asks. I hear that place is really hopping. He then states while leaning forward slightly. A moment of silence occurs. Then Sokka laughs out of nowhere. Katara and Aang look at him. What? Sokka asks in reply to their look. It's pretty funny. All these good jokes are making me tired, the king suddenly states while stretching his arms over his head. Guess it's time to hit the hay. He gets up, but then suddenly pulls a chicken leg from his sleeve and throws it at Aang. Aang, after stopping his first impulse to substitute himself, which would cause far too many questions to be asked, catches it with an air ball, which causes the guards to gasp. There's an airbender in our presence, and not just any airbender. The Avtar, the king states, standing up. Aang stops his airbending and the king sits back down before asking, now, what do you have to say for yourself, Mr. Hataki? While leaning an arm on the table in front of him. Okay, you caught me, Aang said quickly and stood up. I'm the Avtar. Doing my Avatar thing, keeping the world safe. Everything checks out. Aang looks underneath table. No firebenders here. So, good work everybody. He grabs hold of Sokka and Katara and starts backing out of the room as he continues, love each other, respect all life and don't run with your spears. We'll see you next time. They reach the door only to have the guards prevent them from leaving. You can't keep us here, Katara says to the king after having looked behind her at the guards. Let us leave. Let us leave? The king asks and takes bite out of a lettuce leaf on his plate. We're in serious trouble, Sokka states to Aang and Katara. This guy is nuts. Tomorrow, the Avtar will face 3 deadly challenges, the king states, but for now, the guards will show you to your chamber. My liege, do you mean the good chamber or the bad chamber? An old guard standing beside the king asks. The newly refurbished chamber, the king states. Wait, which one are we talking about? The guard asks. The one that used to be the bad chamber, until the recent refurbishing, that is. The king responds. We've been calling it the new chamber, but we really should number them. The turns his head back to the guards that are leading Aang and his friends out of the room and says take them to the refurbished chamber that was once bad. Soon they arrive in a hallway where one of the guards use earthbending to open a wall. Another guard then pushes them inside, after which the wall is closed. This is a prison cell? Katara said after looking around the room. It looks so nice. He did say it was newly refurbished, Aang pointed out. Nice or not, we're prisoners, Sokka stated. I wonder what these challenges are going to be, Aang mused. We're not sticking around to find out. Katara stated there's got to be some way out of here. First I need to check something, Aang said while sitting down in a lotus position. Is this really the time to meditate? Sokka asked Katara, who shrugged. They then just watched Aang as he sat there, trying to figure out what he was doing. Then they noticed his facial features started to change, his cheeks moved and caused the bottom of his eyes to become rounder so his eyes became a perfect circle. On the side of his head he gained 2 small protrusions that looked like horns and his tattoo became gray instead of blue. What's happening to him? Sokka asked. I just entered Sage Mode, Aang stated as he opened his eyes. The eyes were now brown with bigger pupils. I know my appearance is more toad-like, but that's just a side effect of it. You don't look toad-like at all, Aang, Katara stated. If anything, you look like you've taken on characteristics of an flying bison. Really? So that's why it feels differently then. Aang stated what you turn into when entering Sage Mode must change with what contract you sign, and because I haven't signed the toad contract in this body I won't turn toad-like. Instead I gain flying bison features due to my bond with Appa. What are you talking about? Sokka asked, confused. Where I come from you can sign contracts with different summon animals to be allowed to summon them in battle, Aang explained. I signed the toad contract, and when they felt that I was ready they taught me to gather nature chakra to enter Sage Mode, which improves my capabilities quite a bit. I always assumed that it was only possible to turn toad-like because I never heard of anyone else doing it, but it might be because only toads had access to something that made the absorption easier, which allowed them to teach their summoners. So you used to be able to turn into a toad man and now you can turn into a bison man? Sokka asked. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, he continued sarcastically. Why did you need to do that transformation anyway? Katara asked. Oh yeah, almost forgot, Aang said and closed his eyes in concentration. We're underground under the castle, so that rules out sending Momo through the vents to get Appa to free us. There are quite a lot of people in the halls around us, so if we try and flee we'll definitely end up in a lot of fights. If I'm feeling this right, a lot of them are also earthbenders, which makes the fight even harder. How do you know that? Sokka asked, quite freaked out by how Aang suddenly had all that information. When I'm in Sage Mode I gain sensor abilities, Aang stated as his face returned to normal. I can sense all the people around us, along with some basic feel for the surroundings in general. That's a really useful ability. Why haven't you used it before? Sokka asked. Because I wasn't sure whether I could do it, and in most of the situations we've been in I've never had the time to gather nature chakra, Aang stated, and there's the whole risk of turning to stone if I gather too much. You still could have done it sooner, Sokka stated. Well, no point arguing about it now. Katara stated. Get some rest, Aang. Looks like you'll need it for tomorrow. In the middle of the night Aang woke when he felt something trying to force him into a deeper sleep, something that Jiraiya had taught him to react to, since it usually meant that someone was using sleeping gas on him. He took a deep and held it, looking around the room for a source, and the only one he could see was the air vent, so he used airbending to stop air from coming through it, and then waited a while. Soon he heard the sound of earthbending and saw the wall opening, and one of the guards used a torch to look inside, then quickly closed the wall again. Shortly thereafter he heard the sound of earthbending again, but couldn't see the source, so he sat up and looked around just as the sound returned, and he saw the beds that Sokka and Katara had slept in raise up from holes in the floor. Shit, they took Katara and Sokka, he said to himself. He figured that the guard that opened the wall had just checked which bed the two slept in, and then they just removed them by using earthbending from the room beneath them. He then stopped blocking the air vent, and found that they had stopped pumping in sleeping gas, so he began to breathe normally. He then sat down and started to gather nature chakra. Soon he was done, and after a quick check walked up to a wall where he felt that there was a guard. He had wanted to avoid fighting these people, but now he had no choice since they took his friends. He started to form a Rasengan, but when he saw it take on wind characteristics he quickly stopped, since his goal was to knock the guard out, not kill him. Instead he hit the wall with a nature-enhanced punch which, while less destructive than a Rasengan, was still enough to cause the wall to fall onto the guard. Aang grabbed his staff and quickly jumped out, making sure not to step on the fallen wall, and started racing towards where he felt his friends were. Soon he reached some stairs with 2 guards. He unfolded a little of his staff and used it to create a powerful wind that knocked both into the wall while he continued up the stairs. Just as he was about to leave the staircase, he felt a large amount of signatures moving his way and quickly hinged to look like one of the guards, just as a group of guards turned the corner and ran towards him. "Has the airbender come by here yet?" the leading guard asked. "No, sir," Aang responded immediately. "Keep an eye on the staircase. Don't let anyone up until I return," the guard said, then lead his men down the staircase. The moment they were gone, Aang returned to normal and started running, since he knew they would return the moment they saw the downed guards at the bottom of the stair. While hinged, he'd lost his sage mode, so he was now had to rely on his memory and instinct, and hope that they hadn't moved Sokka and Katara from where he'd felt them before. He soon found another pair of stairs, but before he could run up it, he was suddenly encased in earth. "Got you, Avtar," a guard said, coming out of an alcove. Aang closed his eyes and started gathering nature chakra again, knowing that it should allow him to break free. "What are you doing now?" the guard asked. "Was the effect of the sleeping gas just delayed, and now you've fallen asleep?" he continues in mirth. Then he sees Aang's facial features change. "What the?" The earth around Aang cracked and then exploded outwards, knocking the guard backwards just as the group of guards from earlier came around the corner, causing him to knock the ones in front over. Aang quickly ran up the stairs, while he sensed that Katara and Sokka had been moved again, this time to the throne room if he sensed correctly. He also sensed the guards began to stop pursuing him, and that there was an open route leading directly to the throne room. Apart from Katara and Sokka, there were quite a few others in the throne room, so he figured they were getting ready to confront him there. Deciding that, even if it is a trap, he can't really avoid it if he wants to save his friends, he quickly makes his way to the throne room. Once he arrives, he is faced with the king wearing a weird purple robe. "Seems I underestimated your capabilities, Avtar," the king said. "I did not think you would be able to fight off the effects of the sleeping gas, or leave the room even if you did notice your friend's disappearance." "You should know better than to underestimate an Avatar," Aang stated, even though he'd actually used his ninja abilities more than his Avatar ones. "That is true," the king said. "Anyway, since you're here, we can start the challenges early. But first, Avatar, what do you think of my new outfit? I want your honest opinion." Aang hesitates with an answer, causing the king to prompt, "I'm waiting." "If you're into purple, then I guess it's fine," Aang said. "Excellent. You passed the first test." "Really?" Aang asked hopefully, hoping to get those tests out of the way. "Well, not one of the deadly tests." The king said. "The deadly challenges are much more, challenging." Aang unfolded part of his staff and swung it to create a powerful wind in the room, knocking most of the people back, though the king didn't move at all. "I don't have time for your crazy games," Aang yelled. "I know my friends are here somewhere, so give them back to me. We're leaving." "Oh, I thought you might refuse." The king said, "So I'll give your friends some special souvenirs." A wall in the side of the room opens and Katara, Sokka, and 2 guards appear. "Why didn't I notice that there was a hall there?" Aang asked himself as the guards put some crystal-like rings on Sokka and Katara. Those delightful rings are made of pure genomite, also known as creeping crystal. The king explains it's a crystal that grows remarkably fast. By nightfall your friends will be completely covered in it. Terrible thing, really? I can stop it, but only if you cooperate. The crystal starts crawling up Sokka's arm. "Ah! It's already creeping!" he yells. "I'll do what you want," Aang says, "and kick your ass if given a chance," he adds in his head. Aang is led to a room with a waterfall going down the middle of the room. Sokka, Katara, and Bumi are on a ledge in the wall. Aang is surrounded by stalagmites. "It seems I've lost my lunchbox key and I'm hungry." "Ooh, there it is," the king says as he points at the waterfall where the key can be seen hanging from a chain in the middle of it. "Would you mind fetching it for me?" Aang goes into the water and tries climbing up the ladder, using chakra to get a better grip. When the king sees that Aang is actually succeeding in climbing the ladder, he quickly earthbends to make the waterfall more focused, which makes it impossible for Aang to climb higher, and he lets go. "Ooh, climbing the ladder," the king says while earthbending to return the waterfall to its previous state, while hiding his surprise. "No one's ever done that before. Going in from the top isn't going to help me either. But if I aim it just right, I might be able to use a stalagmite," Aang thought to himself before he breaks off the tip of a stalagmite and throws it at the key, followed by some airbending to increase its speed. The stalagmite flies through the waterfall, hitting one of the links in the chain, and continues into the wall above the king's head. There! Enjoy your lunch! Aang shouts, I want my friends back now. Ah, not yet. The king says dismissively, I need help with another matter. It seems I've lost my pet, Flopsy. So what's the defining characteristics of Flopsy? Aang asked as he was about to enter Earth Ditch. Well, he was named Flopsy because of his floppy ears. The king stated that should be enough to find him. Aang jumps into the ditch, and soon he finds a bunny with large floppy ears. Okay. Aang says, found him. Bring him to me. The king says in response, Daddy wants a kiss from Flopsy. Come here, Flopsy, Aang says as he approaches the bunny, only to turn around when he feels a presence behind him. He turns around to come face to face with a massive gorilla goat. He quickly jumps back as the creature reaches its hands out to catch him. After he lands, he sees the bunny run past him, but before he can give chase, he realizes that the gorilla goat also has Flopsy ears, so he looks at it closely. Flopsy? He asks uncertainly. Flopsy immediately starts wiggling its tail, with a big smile on its face and its tongue sticking out of its mouth. It picks up Aang like a baby and licks his face, after which Aang rubs its head in return. Then the king whistles, which caused Flopsy to put him down and jump up to the king. Oh, that's a good boy. The king says while rubbing its belly. Yeah, who has a soft belly? Aang jumps up to where Katara and Sokka, halfway encased in crystals, are. Guys, are you okay? Aang asks in concern. Other than the crystals encasing my entire body, doing great. Katara responds just as a crystal grows on one side of Sokka's body, making him become unbalanced and fall. Aang walks over to Bumi. Come on. Aang says, I'm ready for the next challenge. This sentence caused the king to smile. Aang gets lead onto a balcony that overviews a room that looks like some kind of rectangular arena. Your final test is a duel. The king says from behind him, standing at the entrance Aang just entered through, and as a special treat, you may choose your opponent. A man comes out on either side of the king. One is slim and agile looking and carries a halberd with a crescent-shaped axe head. The other is muscular and also carries a halberd, though this one is more rectangular in its head. So you're saying whoever I point to, that's the person I fight? Aang asks. He knew there was some trick to this. All other challenges had involved what Kakashi would call looking underneath the underneath, or as Bumi said, open your brain to the possibilities. Then it hit him, the king had the same eyes as Bumi. Choose wisely. The king's voice cut into Aang's musings. Even though I know he's probably strong, I still want to find out how good he really is, Aang thought before saying, I choose you, and pointing to Bumi. Wrong choice. Bumi removes his outer robe and straightens himself, proving himself to be a powerful, fit old man. He earthbends at Aang, making him fly into the arena. Then Bumi jumps down right in front of Aang, starting to laugh. You thought I was a frail old man, but I'm the most powerful earthbender you'll ever see. Actually, I was quite sure that you weren't just some frail old man. Aang stated, I just wanted to see how strong you've become while I was frozen, Bumi. So you figured it out, Bumi said. Of course. Aang replied, I was only a question of opening my brain to the possibility that you were still alive, he continued with a smile. Very good. Bumi said. Before we fight, you might want this. He signals a guard that then throws Aang his airbending staff. Thanks, but before we fight, could you perhaps free my friends? I want them to see the fight, probably, Aang asked. Well, since you've already figured out who I am, I see no reason not to. Bumi replied before earthbending himself up to the balcony and quickly breaks the crystals, though he catches a piece of it. Genomite is made of rock candy. He states and takes a bite of the crystal. Delicious! So this crazy king is your old friend, Bumi? Who are you calling old? Bumi asked in mock anger before smiling. Okay, I'm old. He then jumped back into the arena anyway. Let's get on with the fight. He then creates and sends 3 rocks in quick succession, all of which Aang evades. Typical airbender tactic, avoid and evade. Bumi states, I hoped you would be less predictable. He then sent another rock at Aang, causing Aang to jump into the air and then use his staff to stay airborne. Don't you have any surprises for me? Bumi taunts, sooner or later you'll have to strike back. He then sends a rock at the roof, causing part of the ceiling to fall down on Aang. Deciding to change to a more unpredictable counter, Aang substitutes himself with a rock behind Bumi and then pushes himself forward. Just as he reaches Bumi, a pillar of earth raises up, catapulting Aang into the air. Much better. Making me think I got you and then attack from behind, Bumi said. Seems you've finally gained access to the abilities within you. I'd ask how you knew that there were abilities like that within, but I don't think you would give a straight answer, Aang said, as he lands on the opposite side of the arena. I've always seen that there was more to you than meet the eye, some things even you weren't aware of at the time, Bumi said, though now you seem to know. Aang sent a powerful blast of wind at Bumi, but he just raises a plate of earth to block it. Did someone leave the windows open? Bumi asked mockingly. It feels a little drafty in here. Are you hoping I'll catch a cold? Aang charges forward and then throws his staff, sending a blast of air to increase its speed, but Bumi just sidesteps it before sending a wave of earth at Aang. He, however, isn't prepared for Aang to turn into smoke upon being hit, and then feeling a staff at his back. Misdirection has become a speciality of mine since last we meet, Aang stated. After throwing the wind at Bumi, he had used the dust cover to create a shadow clone and henge himself into looking like his staff. His clone then threw him at Bumi, and once he got behind him, he just transformed back to himself. Bumi let himself fall forward, disappearing into the earth, and appearing behind Aang a moment later with a rock. Well done, Aang, Bumi said, throwing the rock to the side. You fight with much fire in your heart. You passed all my tests. He then stepped forward and embraced Aang. I didn't get to say this before, but it's good to see you. You haven't changed a bit. At least physically. Excuse me, Bumi, Sokka said, but why did you do all of this instead of just telling Aang who you were? First of all, it's pretty fun messing with people, Bumi said with a laugh, but I do have a reason. He turns back to Aang. Aang, you have a difficult task ahead. The world's changed in the 100 years that you've been gone. It's the duty of the Avatar to restore balance to the world by defeating Fire Lord Ozai. You have much to learn. You must master the 4 elements and confront the Fire Lord. And when you do, I hope you think like a mad genius. He looks at Sokka and Katara, and it looks like you're in good hands. You'll need your friends to help defeat the Fire Nation. Just then Momo arrives in the arena and lands on Aang's shoulder, and you'll need Momo, too. Thank you for your wisdom, Aang says with a bow, but before we leave, I have a challenge for you. Shortly thereafter, Bumi and Aang are racing down the Pakigi system, and as luck would have it, when they fell off the slide they landed on the cabbage merchant's wagon. My cabbages, he screamed, loud enough for all of Omashu to hear. I've figured out exactly why you being a waterbender affects your clone technique, Aang said after they had landed to rest for the first time since leaving Omashu. Basically, you instinctively had the water element to your chakra when you molded. I found it out when I tried to make a Rasengan only to create a low-level Raisin Shuriken, also known as a Wind Rasengan. Was that explanation supposed to make sense? Sokka asked. I'll show you a Rasengan, Aang said, just give me a moment. Aang closed his eyes while holding his hand out in front of him. He concentrated on creating a normal Rasengan, though it was almost as hard to do as it was when he first started learning it, because he needed to concentrate on not adding wind element to it. After 2 minutes he finally succeeded creating it. This is a Rasengan, he said while folding it up for the 2 others to see. It just looks like a handheld version of your scooter, Sokka said. Then Aang smashed it into a nearby tree, splintering the wood, but it seems a bit more dangerous, Sokka added. It is, Aang said, depending on where it hits and how powerful a person is it can be deadly. The Raisin Shuriken is even more dangerous, in that it basically will create billions of tiny holes in a person's body, even damaging the chakra system. It is also more likely to do recoil damage, which is why I only use it when in Sage mode, because then I can actually throw it. So while the Rasengan you just made would be what you usually do, now you create these Raisin Shuriken instead because you instinctively add air to it. Katara stated, what happens if you add other elements? Never tried learning other elements, though I might test it out at some point, Aang said. Anyway, to get back to what I was saying, because you instinctively add water to your techniques, it creates special effects like making you clone into a mist clone. Okay, so nothing can be done to change this? Katara asked. Well, with training you might be able to do what I just did, completely remove the element when using a technique, Aang said, but I think that in most cases it would be more trouble than it's worth. Okay, so now that we know, what will you teach me next? Katara asked. First I want to know how Sokka is progressing. Aang stated as he turned to Sokka. Show me what you've got. He then activated his Byakugan. He still needed to concentrate a lot to do it, so he couldn't effectively use it in a fight. Okay, Sokka said. He then put his hands in the standard chakra molding position and started to try to mold his chakra. It's almost there, Aang said. For someone with no training in this beforehand, you are quite good. Usually it takes almost 4 months to get this down, so you're making great progress. Thanks, I guess, Sokka said. Anyway, back to the next thing I want to teach you, Aang said, turning back to Katara. I think that the next thing I should teach you is a substitute, since it's a great way to get out of the line of fire. Sounds useful, Katara agreed. Later, after both training and sleeping, Aang and Katara are packing up their camp while Sokka is looking for food. After Aang and Katara are done, they sit down and relax while waiting for Sokka to return. How long does it usually take to master the substitute technique? Katara asked. Well, for most it's actually the hardest technique to master, so the academy actually has a year where all technique training is dedicated to it, though most get it within 4 to 6 months, Aang said. But based on your progress already, you probably won't take that long. At that point, Sokka back, walking along the nearby stream with his food collecting sack. Great, you're back. What's for dinner? Aang asked happily. We've got a few options, Sokka stated. First, round nuts and some kind of oval-shaped nuts, and some rock-shaped nuts that might just be rocks. Dig in. Sokka threw one of the nuts that might be a rock over his shoulder. It lands near Momo. Aang and Katara look at each other, then back at Sokka. Seriously, what else you got? Katara said. Sokka peers with one eye into the bag, hoping to find something else. Meanwhile, Momo is eyeing the rock nut with suspicion. He chitters and picks it up. He taps it on a nearby stone to no effect. Then he beeps back and raps it hard on the stone. At that moment, a huge, startling noise disrupts the forest's calm. The group and Appa look up at the noise. What was that? Sokka asked while Momo looks first at Sokka and then at the rock nut. Momo drops the nut onto the stone again, and another huge sound echoes through the forest, startling Momo again and causing him to jump away from the. Aang points to the right. It's coming from over there, he states. Aang and Katara rush off in the direction of the noise, leaving Sokka waving his arms at them. Shouldn't we run away from huge booms, not toward them? He yells after them before following them. They soon arrive to a fallen tree. They take cover behind it and look down at a riverbed that has been reduced to a small stream. They see a young earthbender is practicing his art in the riverbed, and the three watch him move around a huge boulder. An earthbender, Katara stated in fascination. Let's go meet him, Aang said happily. He looks dangerous, so we better approach cautiously, Sokka said. Katara ignored her brother's warning and started running out into the riverbed to address the young earthbender. Hello there, I'm Katara. Katara said to him. What's your name? The young earthbender looks over at Katara in surprise, drops his rock and runs back down the riverbed. As he runs, he earthbends a load of rock into the riverbed, blocking pursuit. Nice to meet you, Aang yelled after him. We just wanted to say hi, Katara stated sadly. Hey, that guy's gotta be running somewhere. Maybe we're near a village and I bet that village has a market, Aang said after a moment. Which means no nuts for dinner, Katara said excitedly before she and Aang run in the same direction of the boy. Hey! I worked hard to get those nuts, Sokka yells after them. Momo flies past him to join the others, making Sokka look downcast. Yeah, I hate him too. Aang, Katara and Sokka reached a city and entered the marketplace. Aang went to a stall to try out a hat. Great hat, Aang said to the merchant. I'll trade you some nuts for it. Aang turns around to look at Sokka and Katara while laughing. He sees Katara look at the earthbender they saw earlier walk into a house. Aang quickly hands the hat back to the merchant. Hey! Katara says as she runs towards the door with Aang and Sokka. Katara opens door and enters to see the boy stand in front of the counter while a woman is standing on the other side. Hey, you're that kid! Katara said, why did you run away before? You must have me confused with some other kid, the kid states. Just then Aang and Sokka enter. No, she doesn't, we saw you earthbending, Aang stated, causing both the boy and the woman to gasp. The woman quickly goes to close the door and window. They saw you doing what? She asked the boy while her hands are still on the window she just closed. They're crazy, Mom, I mean, look at how they're dressed, the boy said while pointing at their clothing and causing them to look down at it. You know how dangerous that is, she continues, ignoring the boy's feeble attempt to divert the focus of the conversation. You know what would happen if they caught you earthbending. Just then there was a heavy knock on the door is heard and Sokka quickly parts the window blinds to identify the intruders. Open up! Came a voice from the outside. Fire Nation! Sokka stated, act natural. Aang quickly jumps behind the counter, hinging into a pot just in case the soldiers check. Before he ducks down he had taken a quick look at the others and felt like face-palming at their abnormal positions. The boy's mother opens the door and a Fire Nation soldier enters. He looks around the room seeing the people in some very unconvincing normal poses, but decided to not give it too much thought. What do you want? The mother asked. I've already paid you this week. The tax just doubled. The soldier stated. Wouldn't want an accident, would we? The soldier produces a fireball in his hands and smiles, causing everyone, the hidden Aang excluded, to take a step back from the soldier. Fire is sometimes so hard to control, the soldier continued. The mother's expression melts from defiance to fear and resignation. She goes around the counter to get a chest, and is slightly surprised that she can't see Aang, but decides to save it for walks back around the counter and places the chest on it. She opens it to reveal a few miserable coins. She takes most of them out and gives them to the soldier. The soldier dumps the small ones on the ground. You can keep the copper ones, he said as he left the house. The mother picks up the copper coins. Nice guy, Sokka said sarcastically. How long has the Fire Nation been here? 5 years. The mother stated. Fire Lord Ozai uses our town's coal mines to fuel his ships. They're thugs, the boy stated. They steal from us, and everyone here is too much of a coward to do anything about it. Quiet, Haru, the mother said. Don't talk like that. At that point Aang got up from behind the counter, which shocked the mother, but before she could ask questions she was interrupted. But Haru's an earthbender, he can help, Katara said. Earthbending is forbidden, the mother stated. It's caused nothing but misery for this village. He must never use his abilities. How can you say that? Katara asked in shock. Haru has a gift. Asking him not to earthbend is like asking me not to waterbend. It's a part of who we are. You don't understand, the mother stated sadly. I understand that Haru can help you fight back, Katara stated. What can the Fire Nation do to you that they haven't done already? They could take Haru away, the mother stated, like they took his father. She adds. Both Katara and Haru get a sad expression upon hearing that. Anyway, the mother continues while turning to Aang. Where did you come from? When I got the chest you weren't back there. I was, you just didn't notice me, Aang states. How could I not notice you? There are barely any room to hide there, the mother says. That is a secret, Aang said with a kind smile. I don't want to risk knowledge of my abilities to spread. And why is that? The mother asked. Because I'm the Avtar, Aang stated, shocking both Haru and his mother. In the evening Haru lead Aang and his friends into a barn near his mother's farm. My mom said you can sleep here tonight, but you should leave in the morning, Haru told them after they entered. Thanks, Aang said. I'll make sure Appa doesn't eat all your hay. Meanwhile Appa is stuffing his mouth with hay. He looks over at Aang and stops chewing for a few seconds before continuing. After Aang, Katara and Sokka got their sleeping spaces ready, Haru and Katara leave the group to go for a walk. I'm sorry about what I said earlier, Katara said. I didn't know about your father. That's okay, Haru said sadly. It's funny, the way you were talking back in the store, it reminded me of him. Thanks, Katara said shyly. My father was very courageous. Haru told Katara when the Fire Nation invaded, he and the other earthbenders were outnumbered 10-1, but they fought back anyway. He sounds like a great man, Katara said with a small smile. After the attack, they rounded up my father, every other earthbender, and took them away. Haru continues his story. We haven't seen them since. At this point, Katara and Haru had walked up onto the crest of a small hill that overlooks the surrounding countryside. So, that's why you hide your earthbending? Katara concluded. Yeah. The problem is that the only way I can feel close to my father now is when I practice my bending, Haru admitted. He taught me everything I know. Haru knelt down and began twirling some small stones while he spoke about his father. When he is done, he turned the stones to sand, which falls through his fingers. Katara comes up and sits next to him. See this necklace? She said while she points to her necklace. My mother gave it to me. It's beautiful, Haru said. I lost my mother in a Fire Nation raid. Katara explained. This necklace is all I have left of her. It's not enough, is it? Haru asked, though it was clear that he already knew the answer. No, Katara admitted sadly. Katara and Haru sit on the hill looking at the fading glory of the setting sun for a while. After some time they start to walk down a path that goes past some mines when a boom is heard and rocks and dust come out of the mine entrance. The sound of an old man can be heard. Help! He yells in a pained voice. The mine! Haru yells and he and Katara run towards it. They arrive at the mine entrance to find it blocked with an old man mostly buried in the blockage. Help me! He yells out to them. Just then the ground shakes a bit, and more earth threatens to fall on and crush the old man. Haru tries to prevent any more earth falling on the old man by bracing the collapsed mine entrance frame, while Katara tries to get the old man free. It's not working, we have to get help, Katara said while she struggled. There's no time, pull harder, Haru replied. Haru, there's a way you can help him, Katara stated. I can't, Haru replied. Please, there's no one around to see you, it's the only way, Katara pleaded. Indecision dominates Haru's face for a few moments, but then he moves in front of the old man and turns to look back into the mine entrance. He concentrates and with a quick move of his hands and feet he pushes the obstruction of earth and stone back deep into the mine, freeing the old man, whom they help get up. Haru, you did it! Katara stated happily. Soon thereafter Katara and Haru returned to the farm where Katara joined the others in the barn where she told the others what had happened. Aang was laying on Appa, Sokka laying on top a hay bale and Momo was looking out the window. It was so brave of Haru to use his earthbending to help that old man, Katara said in obvious admiration. You must have really inspired him, Aang said, ignoring the jealousy he felt. I guess so, Katara said shyly. Everyone should get some sleep, Sokka said. We're leaving at dawn. Dawn? Katara asked. Can't we sleep in for once? Absolutely not. This village is crawling with Fire Nation troops. Sokka replied. If they discover you're here, Aang, we'll be eating fireballs for breakfast. Good night. I'd rather eat fireballs than nuts, Katara said with a smile on her face. Good night, Sokka said with finality. Aang and Katara laugh, then Katara blows out their lamp. Later that night Fire Nation troops walk along a path leading to Haru's farm. Lamps on poles swing back and forth as they march. The soldier who extorted the money from the previous day leads the column. Aang gets woken by the sound of people approaching and quickly jumps up to see what is going on. He watches as the soldier knocks on Haru's house's door 3 times. The door opens to reveal Haru, who gasps in surprise. At this point Aang notices the old man standing between the soldiers. That's him. That's the earthbender, the old man says while pointing at Haru. The soldiers quickly step forward and grab Haru and pulling him away. Meanwhile Aang jumps back inside and quietly runs to the others and shake them awake, while making sure that they don't scream. Fire Nation soldiers were just here, he whispers to them. They took Haru, seems the old man snitched on him. Oh no, Katara says, we have to save him. For now we should probably stick to tracking them, Sokka said. Why? both Katara and Aang asked. Because if we free him while en route, they will just assume his mother is involved and go for her, Sokka stated. Still, we need to go now if we want to be able to follow, Aang stated. Katara, go tell Haru's mother while me and Sokka get Appa ready. After half an hour, they had overtaken the group that was leading Haru. So what do we do now, Aang asked. We should probably just keep following them, Sokka said. It's not like we can infiltrate the base any other way. We could just get me arrested for earthbending, Katara said. First of, how do you even going to earthbend? Sokka asked, and anyway it wouldn't achieve that much more, so I don't know whether it would be worth it. I think I would have a better chance of faking earthbending, Aang added. Given time you wouldn't need to fake it, Sokka added, though I don't think we should wait for that. Of course not, Katara said, but we do need to get someone on the inside just to gather more information. In that case I'll do it, Aang said, while information gathering and infiltration were never my speciality, I do have the basic understanding that any ninja must have. After that he made a simple henge, which was basically his normal looks, just with hair and different clothing, and without the airbending tattoos. Shouldn't you change yourself a little more? Sokka asked. Still need to keep my abilities secret. With this I can claim it to be a wig and some different clothing. The soldiers were getting close to the harbor where they were to take a ship when they heard screaming from the woods on their left. I told you to get out of here, you lazy bum, one voice yelled. As if, I was here first, you good for nothing thief, another yelled back. Go in and find out what this is about, the leading soldier said to two of his men. The two soldiers quickly arrived in a clearing where Sokka and a disguised Aang were in the middle of an argument. I was the one who found this clearing, so it's mine, Aang yelled, and then used air to lift a fist-sized stone and hurl it at Sokka's shoulder, though Sokka barely managed to dodge. You're an earthbender, Sokka screamed and launched himself at Aang, knocking him to the ground. You've got 18 hours to get information, we'll be right behind you. He then whispered as the soldiers rushed forward to help restrain Aang. Thank you for your help in capturing one of the evil earthbenders, the soldier told Sokka before leading Aang back to the group. After they left, Sokka quickly made his way to another clearing where Appa, Momo, and Katara were waiting. Well, it worked, Sokka said as he arrived. For a happy-go-lucky kind of person, he still has some planning skill. Yeah, though I think that what we just did is considered a pretty basic tactic where he comes from. Katara said he was told of this tactic in his first year at the academy, so I think the only reason it was so that they wouldn't fall for it. True, Sokka admitted. After a boat ride, Aang, Haru, and the other earthbenders arrived at a prison rig, seemingly made completely out of metal. They can place in a line, standing side by side. After that, the warden shows up and starts addressing them. Earthbenders, it is my pleasure to welcome you aboard my modest shipyard. He began. I am your warden. I prefer to think of you not as prisoners, but as honored guests, and I hope you come to think of me as your humble and caring host. Aang had a hard time stopping himself from yelling out that what the warden was saying was bullshit, but managed to keep it. And you will succeed here if you simply abide by the rules. Simply treat me with the courtesy I give you and we'll get along famously. You will notice, earthbenders, that this rig is made entirely of metal. You are miles away from any rock or earth, so if you have any illusions about employing that brutish savagery that passes for bending among you people, forget them. It is impossible. Good day. When the warden is done talking, he turns and walks towards his office as the prisoners are led away. The prisoners are led to an open area on the rig where hopeless and forlorn-looking prisoners roam around. When they enter, Haru starts looking around at the other people there, seemingly trying to find someone. Aang discreetly follows him, waiting for the right point to talk to him. Soon Haru ran up to an old man who was currently eating. Dad, he said as he reached him. Haru, you shouldn't be here, the man said sadly. I got caught earthbending, Haru said. More like you were sold out by a person whose life you saved, Aang said from behind him, startling him. Is that you, Aang? He asked, confused by the hair and clothing. Yep, Aang said with a smile. How did you get here? Haru asked. The same way you did. I got added to your group shortly before we reached the boat, Aang said. You're the guy that got found earthbending in a clearing? Haru asked. But I didn't know you could earthbend. I can't, but lifting a stone and sending it another person is something I can do, Aang said. It looks like earthbending to those who doesn't have the necessary understanding. Who is this? The man asked Haru. This is Aang. He and his friends found me earthbending, and we became friends. Haru said. Aang, this is my father, Tyro. Glad to meet you, Aang said with a smile. Have some lunch, Aang, Tyro said, handing Aang a bowl. Aang looks at it, slightly disgusted, but then says, oh well, better than nuts, causing both Tyro and Haru to look at him weirdly. After eating some of the food, Aang puts aside his bowl. So, do you have any escape plans in the making? Aang asked. Excuse me? Tyro said suspiciously. You know, a plan to get everyone off the rig? Aang said assassination, sabotage, or attempting to get access to materials you can bend to take the guards out by force. The plan? The plan is to survive, wait out this war. Tyro responded, hope that one day some of us can get back home and forget this ever happened. That sounds like you've already given up, Aang said, annoyed. This was wave all over again, except they didn't even have one person in which they placed their hope. Aang, I admire your courage and I envy your youth, but people's lives are at stake here. Tyro said, the warden is a ruthless man, and he won't stand for any rebellion. I'm sorry, but we're powerless. You aren't powerless, merely cowardly and broken, Aang stated. You outnumber the guards 5-1, the only thing they have on you is that they can bend. Even so, if I were to place a mountain of earth in front of you, you would still be too afraid to butt up a resistance. With how lax the safety of this place is, I could probably defeat all the guards on this base in one night, but it wouldn't be worth it to free a bunch of cowards who would lay down and die if the Fire Nation attacks your village again. What do you know? Tyro growled at Aang. You have no idea what we've been through. Maybe not, but I know that waiting and hoping someone else will come along and solve your problems for you is a coward's choice, Aang stated. I can help you fight back, but if you don't help it will be meaningless. Unlike me, many of you still have your families, some of whom are suffering under the Fire Nation far more than you are. Do you think you are doing them a favor by sitting here and saying that the only important thing is that you survive until the war ends? Stubborn brat. Tyro said, you're all talk anyway, there is no earth here anyway. I'll get you something to earthbend with, Aang stated, then stood up and started exploring the rig, leaving a clone behind so that he could explore it in depth without anyone noticing. That night Aang is woken when he feels Appa approaching from the air. Your 18 hours are up, where's Haru? Sokka asks from Appa's back when he sees that Aang is awake. We've got to get out of here. Change of plans, Aang said. Get down here so Appa can get outside the range of the searchlight. What do you mean by a change of plans? Katara asked. We're going to help the earthbenders help themselves rather than just help Haru. Aang stated, I hate seeing people with broken spirits, so I have to help them. Now get down here before you get us caught. Katara immediately jumped down, followed by Sokka at a much slower pace. Aang told Appa to hide, after which Appa left. Aang leads the others away, knowing that guards should come by this point fairly soon. So do you have a plan? Sokka asked. Well, I know what I want to archive, just not sure how to best get it done. Aang said, they have coal here which can be used for earthbending. The only problem is that I don't know how to get it down to the area where the earthbenders are. Well, I brought down a few handfuls, but not enough to be really helpful in a fight. Sokka said, while eyeing a nearby vent. I have an idea that might work. Katara and Sokka back in the prisoner deck area, looking down into an enormous ventilation shaft which is capped by a grate. It's almost dawn, we're running out of time. Katara said nervously, are you sure this is gonna work? It should. Sokka said, though if it fails we still have Aang's clones transporting smaller amounts of coal as an alternative if it should fail. In other words, if this plan fails it just means less coal, not no coal. Sokka takes a breath, then starts elaborating the plan while he and Katara look down into the vent. There's a huge deposit of coal at the base of the silo, and the whole system is ventilated. Aang closed off all the vents except one. When he does his airbending, the coal only has one place to go, right back here. Just as he finishes his explanation, he and Katara look up to find themselves surrounded by Fire Nation soldiers while the prisoners stand a little behind the soldiers. There are the intruders! One of the soldiers yell. Stay back, I'm warning you, Sokka says while drawing his boomerang. Kids, stop! Tyro yelled at them. You can't win this fight. Haru looks stunned at his father's pronouncement. A moment later, the warden arrives. Listen to him well, children. The warden said you're one mistake away from dying where you stand. Just then, the guards and warden got knocked back by pieces of coal flying at them from different directions. A moment later, an undisguised Aang jumped up as well, making Sokka and Katara realize that his clones threw the coal before dispelling. Then air begins to rush out of the vent, closely followed by dust and pebbles. Then a living river of coal erupts from the grate, eventually tearing it away. The coal shoots high into the air over the deck. The warden is clearly shocked and dismayed by this event. The coal lands in a massive pile between the earthbenders and the firebenders. The prisoners look at the pile of earth that has just appeared. Aang drops from his previous position onto the pile of coal. See, I kept my word, Aang said, mostly to Tyro. I got you something to earthbend with. Now the only thing holding you back is your own cowardice. If you don't start fighting back, your families will be doomed to poverty at best, rape and murder at worst. Is that really what you want? 100 years ago, the earthbenders were known for their unyielding spirit. Show me that hasn't changed. Before the earthbenders had time to think on what was said, another voice sounded, ha ha. Foolish child. The warden exclaimed, unyielding spirit, what a joke. The earthbenders' spirits were broken a long time ago. Oh? But you still believe in them? They're a waste of your energy. He was interrupted by a small pile of coal smashing into his face, courtesy of Tyro. This is followed by a piece of coal to his stomach by Haru. Seems you underestimated our spirit, Tyro said. You may have suppressed it, but it isn't broken. Now it's my turn, Aang stated, taking out his staff and creating a powerful wind, sending the soldiers backwards, shocking everyone except Katara, Sokka and Haru, who all knew he was an airbender. The warden manages to get back to his feet along with the other soldiers. Show no mercy! The warden yells to the soldiers. The Fire Nation line charges forward, unleashing a wall of flame. Tyro and the 3 nearest earthbenders, including Haru, block it with a huge wall of coal, making the coal absorb the flames. For the Earth Kingdom, attack! Tyro yells. He then slams the palms of his fists on the deck of the rig, throwing the wall of coal forward towards the Fire Nation line. The fire soldiers deflect some of the rocks with flame. At this point, all of the prisoners have joined the rebellion and have assumed earthbending stances. One-on-one, the earthbenders block fire attacks with coal shields and knock out firebender by striking them huge lumps of coal thrown at high speed. I'll take care of the enemies on the catwalk. You should be able to take the ones down here, Aang yells and runs to the wall and airbends himself up. He then runs along the catwalk, blowing soldiers into the water, quickly approaching the top of the door out of the holding area where the mechanism to open it was located. Katara and Sokka rush forward. Sokka runs at some soldiers holding spears and cuts off the head of the spears with his boomerang and throws the spearheads to Momo, who is flying close overhead. Meanwhile, Tyro and Haru stand in front of the coal dump. They raise a huge amount of coal and then mash it between them to create a boulder. Haru and Tyro are about to throw the boulder when the doors start to open. They look up to see Aang standing at the lever to open the door. Get to the ship! Tyro yells to his fellow earthbenders, we'll hold them off. Do not let them escape! The warden yells, quickly rallying some soldiers around him, and they begin to barrage the exit with flame. Aang jumps down from the wall between Katara and Sokka and is about to try and stop the firebenders when Tyro and Haru launch the coal boulder at the warden, which also momentarily stops the firebenders standing with him. Before they can recover, Aang airbends a small tornado into existence, the end of which is aimed at the firebenders. Guys, throw me some coal, he tells Katara and Sokka. They quickly start dropping chunks of coal into the top of the little whirlwind, which accelerate down the wind tube and exit at high speed towards the firebenders and knocks them down. While Aang, Katara and Sokka do this, Tyro and some other earthbenders are bending more coal towards the warden and his men. They use the coal to create a platform underneath the warden and his men and then levitate the platform over the side of the rig, out of over the open water. No, please! The warden yells, I can't swim! Don't worry, I hear cowards float. Tyro responded before causing the platform to crumple, depositing the firebenders into the water. Aang and the others start running towards the Fire Nation's ships, only getting into a few minor skirmishes along the way, Though unknown to them, during one of these skirmishes Katara loses her necklace. Soon they are on board the ships and steaming away from the rig. Appa with Sokka and Katara swim next to the point ship. Meanwhile, Aang is with Tyro and Haru on the deck of the point ship. "I want to thank you for saving us," Haru said to Aang. "I merely helped you help yourself." Aang stated, "It's part of the Avatar's job, after all." "Thank you for helping me find my courage, Avatar Aang," Tyro said, quickly recovering from the shock that Aang is the Avatar. "My family and everyone here owes you much." "So what do you intend to do now?" Aang asked. "Take back my village," Tyro exclaims, then raises his voice, "to take back all of our villages. The Fire Nation will regret the day they set foot on our land." The earthbenders on all of the ships start cheering at those words. Part end. So how was the story? I hope you like it. Share this story with your friends and comment down if you want more stories like this. I will meet you in the next video. Peace out.